As probably you've noticed during Lent, the readings, the first reading and the gospel reading, are quite different than they are through the rest of the year. Well, during the weeks of the year, not Advent, not Easter season, but, through so-called ordinary time. Right? And in those during that time, there's kind of continuous readings of something in the first reading and a continuous reading of the gospel, and they don't have really anything to do with one another, right? Every once in a while you get lucky, right? But in general, not so much. But in Lent, it's very different, right? These are kind of it's kind of like, as they would say today, all these fancy terms, today, These are kind of the artisanal readings, right? Curated, as they would say. Hand-selected, a first reading and a gospel that go together, right? And because of that, you jump all over the Bible because of that, which is refreshing, right? I mean, let's be honest. A couple of weeks of St. Paul in a row, he's great, right? But it gets a little tedious. You want something different. Okay, that's fine. But today, and again, there's always a link between those readings. If you were going to pick out one word, really, to talk about the theme of the day, it would probably be something on the order of, or a synonym of, betrayal. Right? First reading, the story of the great story of Joseph, celebrated in Broadway shows, right? And Joseph is the favorite son of his father, right? The favorite son of his father. And because of that, the other brothers hate him, right? They're jealous, right? So much so that, as we heard in this lovely family story today, they want to kill him. Right? Let's throw him into the cistern, let him drown, they'll never find him in there. And one, at least, was it Reuben? I think it's Reuben. I forget, it doesn't matter. Yeah, Reuben. Reuben has a soft spot in his heart, I guess, for Joseph. He still wants to kill him, sort of. But instead of throwing him in the hole in the ground, let's put him in the hole in the ground and let it be dry, and it won't be so nasty. Right? He's got a soft heart. Right? And then in inspiration, right? These traveling, Bedouin, vagabond, people coming through the desert. Let's sell him to him. They take him to Egypt. They'll never find him there. And we know what happens. They do, he does, and they were wrong. Right? But think about that. Think how much they hated his guts to do what they did. Why? Because he was good. He was a good man. Can't have that, right? The gospel story is basically the same, kind of a parable. We talked about this yesterday, right? Not something that really happened, but a story that has meaning, right? A story that has meaning. And we're all familiar with this. This one comes up all the time throughout the year, and the years of the Sundays, for example, and through the weekdays through the year. This parable of the landowner with the vineyard, right? He plants a vineyard, builds a vineyard, great. And he says, I'm going to go over there for a while, and I'm going to lease it out to somebody. They can take care of it, right? And they are greedy, right? These tenants have been given a good deal, but they're greedy, right? And when the landowner's representatives come to get the grapes that are due him, they kill him. They stone him, beat him up, right? We heard. But the tenants seized the servants. One they beat, another they killed, a third they stoned. Okay. And then the landowner sends more, and the same thing happens to them, right? But thinking they will respect my son, and he sends his son. This is like wink, wink. You know what that means, right? Right? I mean, this is not terribly subtle, is it? You don't need, a doctoral degree in sacred scripture to be able to figure out what this is all about, right? And what happens to the son? They kill him. They don't even bother to beat him up and stone him first. They just kill him. And in fact, little detail, they take him outside of the vineyard and kill him. Just like Jesus was taken out of the city of Jerusalem and killed outside of the city, right? Not a real happy story, right? Again, the landowner does a good thing. He plants this vineyard, right? He kind of creates jobs for the people of the area, proves the area. He does a good thing. But these tenants are greedy, and they hate goodness, just like Joseph's brothers. And they kill every one of the landowner's representatives, including his son, outside of the vineyard. Again, this is not hard to figure out what this is about, right? As we know, Jesus is rejected by his own people. He's rejected by the chief priests and the Pharisees. That's an interesting, when I was thinking about this, I thought this would be a good angle. And I'm going to tell you anyway, but it's not the main point, right? We talked about the chief priests and the Pharisees the other day at this time, right? Now, what did the chief priests and the Pharisees have in common? Nothing, except they hated Jesus. Why? Because he's good. Not only is he good with a little g, he's good with a big G. He is goodness, right? He is goodness. We can't have that, right? Now, there's nothing new here. Somewhere, I think Jesus says this somewhere in the Gospels. Should have looked it up. Doesn't matter. You believe me, don't you? Right? And if not, it's a great story and it's better. It doesn't matter, right? Somewhere in the Gospels, Jesus says, between Abel and Zechariah, isn't that interesting, right? You've killed all the prophets. From Abel to Zechariah, from A to Z, right? And in fact, not only is that alphabetical oriented, but it's chronologically oriented, right? Who was Abel? The son of Adam and Eve, right? What happens to him? He gets killed. By who? His brother. Why? Because he was good. Zechariah, this is subtle. And again, you got to look at this from a certain tradition. But in some traditions in the Christian churches, who is this Zechariah? It's the father of John the Baptist. Remember the guy who couldn't talk for a while? It's him. But who was he? He was a priest. One of the traditions is, as John becomes to prominence, right? And Jesus comes along, Zechariah is killed just outside of the temple. Right? It's the same story over and over again. And all the prophets had they all had rough times. Some of them had bad endings. Right? And we can look back, we can hear these stories and say, weren't those people rotten? Right? Wasn't Cain rotten? Wasn't Joseph's brothers rotten? Weren't the people who killed Zechariah rotten? Weren't Herod and his cowardly Herod and his floozy wife, right? Weren't they rotten for killing John the Baptist? And ultimately, weren't the people of Jesus' time rotten for killing him? Yeah, right? But the story doesn't end there, does it? In fact, we know the story doesn't end there because this story has another aspect to it, right? Now, there's an interesting thing, a little interesting twist in here. Right? I've heard some comments recently that there's too much violence in the Old Testament, right? And there's a lot of violence in the Old Testament. People are getting whacked all the time, right? Now, so, go back to the story. There's 2 points here. When the tenants saw the son, they said to one another, "This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and acquire his inheritance." Hold that thought. They seized him, threw him out of the vineyard, and killed him. Now, Jesus says, what will the owner of the vineyard do to those tenants when he comes? He asks a question. Who is he talking to? The Pharisees and the chief priests and the religious people of his day. The people of his day. Let's not just limit it to them. He's talking to everybody. What is their response? He will put those wretched men to a wretched death and lease his vineyard to other tenants. He will put those wretched men to a wretched death. More whacking. But where does it come from? Not Jesus, but from the people of his day. Because this is what we do. This is how we address problems, right? You don't like them, get rid of them. That's kind of an interesting thing. Why? Because we hate, again, go back to the bigger story, right? The world, right? The values of the world hates goodness, right? Think about that. This is an example. Now this might be just my own subjective, wrong opinion, but I'll stand by it, right? Look at popular culture today. And think of anything you like, right? It could be music especially, and all that goes with that. Popular music, movies, right? Things like that. Even artwork, you could say. What is a theme that runs through all that? It kind of denigrates goodness, doesn't it? As we would understand goodness, right? Not the values of the world, but the values of the gospel. When seen through that lens, worldly popular culture hates that and does everything it can to tear it down, to ridicule it. I think that's true. I could be wrong, but you think about it yourself and see what you think, right? Is that not true? I think that's a basic issue with the world. The world hates goodness, and it will kill it if it can. Think of all, when you've got people, and again, this is the heart, because we're all sinners, right? Let's be honest. Every saint's a sinner. Don't forget that, right? Every saint was also a sinner to the day that they drew their last breath. But still, we have there's good people in the world, right? And what does the world try to do? Tear them down. Let's investigate him. Let's find out. There must be some skeleton in his or her closet so we can tear him down and drag him down into the gutter with us. I think there's something to that. The world hates goodness. But the world is also kind of messed up, too. Think back the other point there. Finally, he sent his son to them, thinking they will respect my son. Really? Right? God is the ultimate wishful thinker, right? Because God is good. God is truth. God is beauty, right? I will send my son into this mess, and they will respect my son. Some do, most don't, right? And what do the tenants say when this happens? This is the heir. Come, let us kill him and acquire his inheritance. Well, that's kind of interesting, isn't it, when you think about it? Is that true? No. And in fact, it'd be illegal, I would say, right? Let's say I had an heir. Let's pretend, right? And let's pretend, and here's a real pretend. Let's pretend I'm really rich, right? Well, I am in many ways, but not in the way the world keeps score, right? If somebody kills the heir, they don't get the inheritance, do they? They go to jail, hopefully. Taken out of circulation, at least. There's a logic problem here. But isn't that the logic of a fallen world, a fallen person? If we kill the heir, we will get the inheritance. Don't we do that kind of all the time? Don't we make that assumption all the time? Not consciously, right? But every time we do something wrong, every time we sin, like really sin, right? I don't mean break the rules, the laws. Forget that, But we really we do something evil that is really evil. I don't know. We kind of do that all the time, don't we? What's the thought process in our heads? I know Jesus wouldn't want me to do that, but I'm going to do it anyway, right? So let's set aside this Jesus guy for a moment while I do whatever I'm going to do. And by doing that, I will gain the inheritance. I will become God, right? That is the inheritance, isn't it? Right? If you don't like God's rules, God's commands, God's counsels, well, just kill him and be your own God. Human beings have done this from the get-go, haven't we? Now, we're not, you wouldn't be here today, I don't think, if you were out there, taking this too seriously, right? But in our own little subtle ways, we do it all the time, don't we? Right? We kill off God so that we can be God. Right? And hence, if Jesus was still alive today, I'd have killed him. Right? And maybe you would too. Right? Because the falling world hates goodness. Right? It's something to reflect upon, right? During this Lenten season, on this Friday of Lent, on this penitential day, right? It's, just think of it. This is an aside, but it's relevant, right? Think of all those poor souls who went to hell for eating a hamburger on Friday, right? And in 1966, no more problem with that, right? That's a joke, because it wasn't funny. I think it's hysterical, right? It just goes to kind of the silliness of some of these things, right? It still is a penitential day, right? And if following the rule of don't eat meat on Friday helps you on that, well, that's fine, right? But if it's just a hoop to jump through, or you really like fish, right? You've kind of missed the point, haven't you? Oh boy, I love Friday. Love that fish, right? You've missed the point. Today is meant to be a penitential day, a day of conversion. And the way of conversion is to first be honest with ourselves, isn't it? Right? Here's today's question. Here's your penitential question of the day, right? How have I tried to be the God of my own life recently? Right? Now, there's a question you could take, and then you'll have something real to bring to confession, right? It's actually meaningful. It's worthy of going to confession. Right? And working on this lifelong project of penance, of conversion. Right? So we ask the Lord to help us with that, to give us the insights that we need, to know ourselves, to be honest with ourselves, right? And then to move forward, right? To accept the gift of grace that God offers us during this season of Lent. That's the whole point of penance. Empty out the mess and make some room for the good, right? And that's kind of where we started, wasn't it, right? The world hates the good. So clear out all the garbage in your life a little bit, as best you can, or at least a little bit. We're all hoarders of crap, aren't we? Should have said that, should I? Sorry. We got to hoard the nastiness of our lives, You will see that in confession, right? People that confess things they've confessed 100 times. Why didn't you let it go? God did. Right? Let it go. Make some room so that goodness can be in the heart of all of us.